Hello and welcome to the Team Poland 40k podcast. I'm Pumba, and this time we have a very special episode to bring you a quick hot take on the newly released Balance Dataslate by GW that just dropped today. With me to discuss it, I have a Team Poland member, my co-selector for this season, and a long-time ETC/WTC veteran, Duda.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Glad to have you on the show. Finally, actually, because you were running this show in Polish for years now, so I think it's, due time to have you on the English version as well. So the plan for today is we will go through all the changes in the data slate, since, let's be honest right now, there aren't that many. And we will discuss them together, give our hot takes, our opinions, so you have the quick summary of what and why happened and what do we think of it. I think that's it for the intro, and we can begin more or less. Alright, so I think we will start with the, in my opinion, biggest change that just happened in the whole data slate actually, which is Tyranids, particularly Leviathan, getting their another of their nerfs actually, because they've already got a lot of them beforehand, although that didn't actually change that much in terms of their win rates and actual power level, so let's see what this does. The basic change here is that Synapse non-monster creatures in the Leviathan High Fleet do not gain the transhuman ability, so they can be wounded normally, which basically affects, I believe, two main units that were played so far, which is Tyranid Warriors and Zoanthropes.
But they will have like small transhuman, right? On 1 and 2s.
That is actually not correct.
Really? So?
Yes, because GW doesn't realize how the rules are actually written, and only non-Synapse creatures gain the mini transhuman. So currently, you cannot wound any non-Synapse creatures on 1 and 2s. You cannot wound the monsters, Synapse monsters, on 1 to 3s. But you can wound Zoanthropes or Tyranid Warriors completely normally. This might be FAQ'd.
Come on, it will be.
Even if it will, I don't think that actually this changes much or anything. I mean, we are talking just strength 10 and above weapons. In case of Warriors and Zoanthropes, because they are toughness 5. So that's a very small portion, which I don't actually believe changes that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, but the change itself, like, changes a lot for me.
Yeah, definitely.
But it strikes only one certain build, which was like Warrior spam, so...
Yep. It basically strikes the most common build that is played on the big major singles tournaments, which was the Leviathan Warrior spam, or the list that Ines Wilson or David Gaillard were running, for example, which is like two big blobs of warriors, like one small squad, and the rest basically. Or the list that I was running at WTC, which was just 36 goddamn Tyranid Warriors. And that's basically it, right?
Yes, and do you think that this change, like, lists like this are just killed? Or are they worse, but still viable?
No, I think Warrior spam is completely dead right now. I think it's very safe to say that Tyranid Warriors as a core of an army cannot and will not work without transhuman at all. They will be just, as we've discussed, especially because of the wording, they are just as good or as bad as in other fleets, and they actually don't gain anything from Leviathan right now. So, except for maybe the Hive Nexus, which is valid, they still can gain the invulnerable save from the Leviathan psychic power, from the Imperative, but that's basically it. So I do believe all kinds of Leviathan Warrior spam lists are completely dead. I'm wondering how this will impact other builds, because not many were actually running Warriors in them. I'm wondering about, for example, the Leviathan Mortal spam list. because if you remember, the Zoanthropes did abuse the transhuman as well, especially in that build, and they did lose that ability, and I think this impacts that particular Mortal Spam build. What I'm talking about is of the German list from WTC or its variations that came after, which is like 2 Harpies, 3 Neuros, 3 Squads of 3 Zoanthropes, like a Maleceptor, stuff like this. And I think that build lost a bit of its power and survivability, but I don't know if enough to actually impact it much.
But still, it's just they are just less tough, the models in there, so that is an impact. Like, you will feel it on the table that suddenly you're wounded on 3s, not on 4s.
Definitely.
But as you said, it's more impactful for the warriors rather than for Zoanthropes.
Definitely, yes. Zoanthropes are still a great unit, maybe even just straight up broken unit in my opinion, and I think this change doesn't impact them as much as I would like. I think the Mortal Spam lists are gonna be prevalent, as well as Kraken builds that literally lost nothing.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think that it targeted a certain one Hive Fleet rather than Codex itself, which Codex itself is more powerful than the others, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely like the power level of the Codex, in my opinion, just didn't move at all. The thing is, it's very visible from this change that as GW previously mentioned, they are driven by data, but they don't actually interpret the data well enough, in my opinion. The thing about Leviathan builds was that it was the quick and easy kind of build. It was very strong, and many skilled players took it and did incredible things with it, but also it was very simple to perform with it as an average player, which just drove the win rate of the faction so high. I think the win rate of the faction is gonna fall, but it just won't impact the overall strength of the faction at all. So if you are playing still like a good opponent on the top tables of the tournament, for example, and they will just pivot into like a Kraken build, a Mortal Spam list, or something similar, or we might even see some new interesting builds. I mean, we've seen in Poland especially, we've seen pivots into Jormungandr, Carnifex Spam, for example. It's still a very good build that has its place. So this just targets one particular build, literally one build, and I don't think it actually fixes the faction, but it will have impact on the power, like on the win rates, but not the actual power level.
Yeah, and that's what makes us sad, because the win rates doesn't really matter.
The thing is, that's the thing. If you're using win rates as your main source of data and something that's purely drives your decisions in terms of balancing, I think it's just a flawed approach. And I think nothing proves this as much as this Dataslate. The second change done to turrets is reducing the mortal wounds done by Ripper over Britagrax, so the Hive Tyrant Flyrant relic. So he can only deal a maximum of 3 mortal wounds in addition to his normal damage. It still ignores all the wound caps, it still ignores Feel No Pain. What do we think about that change?
Like, I would not say it's a change for the Balance Dataslate. Come on. That's targeted for a certain relic, and it should be just in FAQ for Tyranny, but not for Balance Dataslate. Not at all. Like, it doesn't impact the faction or balance of the game at all.
I would agree with that. I think it's just obnoxious that this was not default. I think such simple solution should, like, the power level of this single relic was huge. Like, it was, I think, the best relic.
It's very good, come on. What the cap doesn't really change anything.
It changes it a little bit, right? Now it
changes, of course, but that's not that it doesn't make the relic like worse or I don't know, like equal to the others.
Yeah, it's still an auto pick 99% of the time. It still ignores all the caps, of which there are many in the current 40k landscape. It still ignores feel no pains, so that's still amazing to take. It just reduces the damage dealt by the actual model a little tiny bit. You're just like
for two mortal wounds,
two mortal wounds
average?
average, I think 3, something like that, exactly. To me, just the fact that this was not already default, that this wasn't done much earlier, like we are talking months earlier. I would expect this to be in the codex or come out, I don't know, a month after it. In the first FAQ, I would have done this change. The fact that we waited 5 months before the data slate to get this change as one of the 2 changes to the strongest faction in the game is just amazing to me. It's just like how is this a thing?
So I guess what you are trying to say is like, and let me like interpret it. Why don't Games Workshop just make like every month, every 2 months, let's say, erratas and FAQs to codexes, like slightly changes, and this should be like slight change that comes out of nowhere after a month to if they see it's too big. You don't have to wait like half a year for a Balance Dataslate to add such little thing to the game. You can just, we are working on PDF files. If you want to, you can just in a single day you can just add a sentence to the errata and upload it, and that's it. And somehow the designers of the Games Workshop had to wait 3 months to add it to the Balance Dataslate, which should target entire game, not a single relic.
That is correct. I mean, I do understand why they are not constantly updating things, right? You want to keep at least some stability in the game, and that's fine. And to me, that change should be put in an FAQ. I mean, put it in the slate. I don't care. Just like what I would do is make just FAQ it, errata it, or something in whichever you want, but don't make it a crucial addition to the slate. I think this should have been done much earlier, and much just simpler way. Just FAQ it, man. Just do anything. You've had so much time, and after 5 months, I think this is just insane that this is the change we are getting. I mean, the model is still obnoxiously broken. It still has access to overrun, which is one of the best stratagems in the game. It still ignores the caps. It's just a powerhouse. It still has goddamn bodyguard rules on a 14 wound model. Ah, man. Like, thinking about it, it is losing 2 points of damage on a model that's broken on so many levels. That is not even funny to me anymore.
Well, yeah, because what I wanted to say was like not to make like constant changes. Of course, you don't want to make it constant changes, but the minor changes could be done like with the frequency of 1 month, for example, like adding such minor rules. It's not a balancing data slate that fixes the balance of entire game. So why have to wait to the big thing which is the Balance Dataslate? And they hype up that there will be the Balance Dataslate. You're thinking, okay, so we will learn the new game, we will have big changes, and then you see like cap of 3 mortal wounds on a relic, and you're like,
yeah, I completely agree with this take of yours. I think the in general, Terrans just got away with murder. That's my opinion on it. They were something like 60% win rates. They had the by far the best tournaments in winning position. They won the biggest amounts of tournament, I believe, in the recent season. And they just constantly were oppressive in the meta. And I mean, this is something that we are experiencing, I think, more because, to be honest, have you played against just a standard Leviathan list in Poland? Like, on a tournament, ever?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Alright. That's interesting. How many, though? Like 1?
Yeah, I guess it was the one.
Yeah, so it happens, I get it, but it's not common in here. What you were like, I've been constantly playing like on our local tournaments against Crooker, who is a local player, let's say. I mean, he's from the other city, but he constantly plays at our tournaments, and he has many interesting ideas playing tournaments, none of which really conform to this obvious idea of just 2 warrior bricks, a flyer and a walker or something, 2 harpies. He often innovates, and to be honest, like most of his builds are very good and very competitive. So it just proves to me that Tyranids really don't rely as much on the warriors, on the Leviathan warriors, as everybody could expect. So overall, I think it's almost a non-change. I think Tyranids will pivot into Kraken, into other builds. I think they have a lot of space to do so. And overall, this doesn't change the power level of the Codex at all.
Yeah, the power level of the Codex stayed the same. But that's the problem of like balancing the game through the win rates. But I guess this is the topic for a whole entire other episode. So maybe next time we will make something like this. Why the win rates and balancing the game over it makes no sense.
Kinda. We can also discuss this, I think, a little bit at the end of this. Alright, moving on to Harlequins. So the only change here, which is how big is it, we'll discuss further, but the change here is you can no longer advance and shoot with your pistols and I guess grenades, but mainly pistols, if you are embarked on a transport when you are light say death. Basically reducing your movement if you want to shoot with your Harlequin players in a boat by 6 inches, right? Alright, how impactful do you think that is?
So, for me, that's the very good change, because it's a very big difference for me. Like, this 6 inches may seem not that great, but when you look at it, it changes a lot. Like, suddenly the Harlequin players, if they want to shoot next turn, they are 6 inches closer, so they can be charged. The short range weapons suddenly gets the range, and your opponent threatens you more when you are closer.
You can no longer basically hide behind walls 22 inches from your opponent and just completely ignore them. You need to at least make some decision to be exposed to actually strike your opponent.
Yeah, exactly. So the game starts to be less uninteractive rather than it was before. Like, I remember my game with my son. He just ignored my deployment at all, and he just placed like, he asked me what was my range, and he like placed all his models like, I don't know, 13 or 14 inches on the line, out of the line of his deployment, and I didn't do anything, like only one scatter laser shoot because they are 36, and then he could easily like jump 22 inches at the middle of the table and start shooting me. And if there was like 6 inches less, then if he stayed like this, okay, he was safe, but I was safe also. Or he should be like 6 inches closer to me, so suddenly I could charge, for example, I could shoot with shorter range weapons and such things. And that's the big difference, but I would say it doesn't kill this army at all. The army is still very good. It's more like interactive and more decision making, but still it's a very good army. Like the whole of the army stays the same. So this change is very good, as I'm thinking, because it nerfed Harlequins, but as the power of the Codex, like this playstyle, everything stayed the same.
Interesting. So I have some similar opinions, and some of them I differ in. So overall, actually, thinking about it, I said that the synapse change is the biggest one. I think I just backtracked on it. I think this is bigger, and I also like it more as well, as you've said. it does reduce the threat range, which was definitely the bigger offender in Harlequins. I mean, the survivability is another one, but hey. This doesn't reduce the survivability of the codex, which actually I think could use some work, but I do like the change in a sense that you've discussed. What I'm thinking of, it will make the army much more difficult. Like, hell of a lot difficult. So far, it was quite a difficult codex to master. It had a very high skill ceiling, but the more I played against them and more I discovered them and understood them, I think their skill floor was also quite low after you played some games with them. Because you had so much threat range, you were just so insanely fast, you could allow yourself, as long as you just didn't fuck up immensely and gave up too much of your army, you could play extremely safe and extremely aggressive at the same time. And I think that is no longer possible, which is good. I think it will greatly reduce their win rate. So again, basically Games Workshop would say they achieved their goal. But again, talking about from the upper table perspectives, I think more and more people will pivot elsewhere than Light Sadath now. I think the Light Sadath, main thing that it gives now is actually just a stratagem, which is, I mean, quite amazing, to be honest. But now I'm thinking like Twilight builds, Inari builds, maybe even Dark might be. I mean, Dark, I don't think so. I think the actual Sadath, the actual characterization or whatever it is called, I don't think it's that good. But Twilight is looking hella stronger. I mean, you now have you don't have the mobility that Light gave you, so now you're actually not giving it up. And you might just pivot into some other build that utilizes. I mean, if you need to play more of a smart game, anyways, why not make it into another mask that just deals more damage, for example, and plays just completely different game?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, internally, it is a very good change, like, inside the codex, because suddenly it turns out that there is not only one proper mask, or Sadnev, or what it's called, but you are thinking of taking Twilight, even Dark, maybe Inari, so like, internally, the change is very good for me.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I am actually not certain how it affects the overall power level of Harlequins, if they got that much weaker. Definitely internally, they got balanced out, let's say. And I'm honestly not sure how it impacts them outside of just their own codex. Like, how strong will they be into other armies right now?
Yeah, that we will see.
It's definitely not the same case as with Turnus. I think it actually might make a significant change in how the army is built and approached and their actual power level, I think it will be way easier. If somebody grabs just off-the-shelf 8 boats, I think it's gonna be way easier to play against them. Like, way easier. Whereas you wouldn't say that about playing any other Tyranid build.
Against it. Oh yeah, sure. Like, that was a bit frustrating that you come and the player is like on his first tournament, but he is like has 8 boats. Yep. And even though he doesn't really know the rules, he struggle with it because that's the power of this army.
Basically, right? Alright, on to Space Marines with my favorite change of this data slate. I'm like, as a Space Marine player, I would have preferred them to do nothing. And I'm not kidding right now. I am legitimately frustrated to my core about this change. I think it is just obnoxious. So what we are actually talking about is Shock Tactics Secondary that scores you used to score you 3 victory points when you take the objective from your opponent. Very important thing. You need to take the objective, control it from your opponent, so he needed to control it first. Not just taking any old objective. It used to score you 3 victory points, and now it scores you 4 victory points for the exact same thing. And that's it.
So basically, Games Workshop last, 2 weeks or last week, they told us that Space Marines are bad because they have too low win rate, right?
Yeah, that's basically what they say. I mean, they implied also they are a new player faction or something. But the general gist of it, and it is included in the article of the actual dataslate, and their win rates that they used to balance, that they have the lowest win rate of all factions in the game. And this is all they are getting. And we are talking combined Space Marines here. So we are talking all of the chapters, of like many of which are not created and played equal. Like Blood Angels, especially the more Western big tournaments, the majors, the GTs, the Blood Angels are doing quite well, at least about 50% win rate. We have Space Marines factions with as low as 24% win rates. Imperial Fists, I believe, sit on a 24% win rate right now.
Yeah, and you just get +1 victory point on a secondary that I don't know if anybody ever took it.
I mean, I took it. When I played Salamanders, I took it in the recent Polish Championships. I think it was this was the secondary that you would probably sometimes choose if you had no other better options, stuff like this. But man, does this suck for a change for one of the 2 worst armies in the game. If you pick the secondary, you would probably the biggest problem with the secondary to begin with is if you start the game, you cannot max it. There's no way of you to max it. It's a grind them down situation, but even worse. If your opponent is not on an objective in the middle of the board, you will not score this secondary. It gives so much agency to your opponent to actually not go into the middle objective and literally take points away from you. So he does this the first turn, he might just do this the second turn. So I think if you are taking the secondary, which again, I think is not optimal for very many Space Marine chapters and armies and missions. So even if you are taking it, we are talking 2 to maximum, I think, 3 victory points per game as a change. It's worse than nothing, as I've said.
After half year of waiting, right?
After 5 months of waiting for this datasheet, or after sucking from the moment that Drukhari Codex came out, Space Marines were absolute dogshit. Then they did the whole lots of nerfs, most of it which are still not getting undone. Let's remember, a Plasma Inceptor still costs 60 fucking points. It's something they were nerfed from their base stat and brains cost, as is the case with many Space Marine units that were nerfed at the beginning of the edition, and rules that were nerfed in the beginning of the edition, and instead of reverting those changes and at least giving Space Marine players their base codex as they have received it at the start of the edition, after many codexes surpassed them, you get 3 victory points. Most. With your 40%, less than 40% win rate. Or if you are Imperial Fist, 24% win rate. You have 1/4 of a chance to win a game against basically, on average, anybody. And I'm sure those 2 additional points will do you well after you get tabled by Tyranids in 3 turns.
If you want to listen more complaining, tune on for English Team Poland podcast.
Like, I'm not kidding. I'm legitimately mad about this change. Like, I was counting on something to move and to budge, and especially after Games Workshop said that they are clearly seeing Space Marines struggle. I expected them to realize this, and as I've said, I think I'm making some changes, just returning the units to their base cost, doing something to the doctrines, for example. I mean, the 9th edition Codex was kind of a nerf to Space Marines in a sense, right? I think this happened even in 8th edition, but we used to be able, back when, we used to be able to just pick our doctrines and kind of stay in the same doctrine for more than one turn, for example, in the Devastated Doctrine. I mean, back then, it broke the game, and everybody agreed that the change of moving into the other doctrines automatically was a good one. But I mean, the company that just admitted that they shouldn't use old data and the game is always evolving, just ignored the faction as a whole, I think. I mean, I would prefer them to ignore it instead of making that change. I think it's just so obnoxious. To say it doesn't change anything would be an understatement. I mean, I would rather they actually forgot about Space Marines. That would be preferable to me, yes. I'm seriously mad about this one. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, I guess we can hear it. But what's so interesting, you said today earlier that the same guys who made this change after you said after admitting that Space Marines struggle and they really require help, and the same team, like 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, nerfed Leagues of Votan even before that codex came out. Like, they nerfed it very, very hard, right?
I mean, some of the League of Votan builds lost 500 points. 1/4 of your list just went poof.
And the same team, I guess the same team, maybe that was the other Unitor.
Yeah, that's the that's the assumption, right? That they have as one team that actually.
Yeah. Maybe there is other team of balancing and other team for codexes, but let's say that the same team, the same company, thinks that +1 victory point on some secondary fixes the entire army, like the worst army in the game.
Yeah. I mean, I would legitimately, if I'm guessing if this is gonna move the needle by just a bit, I honestly don't think so. What might move the needle slightly in terms of Space Marines, I guess, is the fact that both Harlequins and Tyranids, which were the strongest factions in the game, and that we are very good against them, did receive at least some sort of changes. So that might maybe, in some case, improve their win rate and their overall standing. But that has nothing to do with this change that GW made. Nothing. And I mean, it's just so heartbreaking to feel like you have so many potential ideas to make it way better without. We are not talking about just returning to the Iron Hands 8th edition rules. There are so many avenues to actually make Space Marines work again. And instead, back when, a couple of months ago, or even right now, it's like, 8 months ago, we got AOC, which actually just benefited other armies instead of Space Marines. And now there's nothing. And I mean, I wanted to play the faction again, and I really gave up on it. I can tell you that. I don't think I'm coming back.
Yeah. I guess I understand what you feel. You think you understand the game, you know it, you play it, and you see like a lot of places which can be fixed. I don't know if you have the same, but I am like, I could like take 2 days off, fly to the fucking UK, go to the Games Workshop headquarters and explain this designer team what to do and what do they do not understand, just to make the game better. But I know I don't know. I don't even believe they would understand it.
If you had a week, you can pump like 50 games and actually test some of the ideas. Like, legitimately.
Exactly.
Which would be more than I think any of the changes designed ever get. So, let's go. Alright, Let's move on from the salt mines of Space Marines onto AdMech, which was the other absolutely grotesque low win rate faction. And the basic change here is that they got unnerved. So,
that's it.
It can be done. They can just revert the changes. Whoa. Wait, hey, maybe they just lost the previous documents of Space Marines. Maybe that's why it's just not possible, man. They just lost the previous points and rules, how they were written and stuff.
Maybe the unitor deleted it.
Yeah, the janitor just deleted the file and it's gone. Yep. Back to AdMech.
Okay, do you think the AdMech changes will impact anything?
So, I already actually had a talk with my local AdMech player, Cranmer, who was part of my the Polish Team Championship team. And we basically agreed to not... We don't have a clue, is what I'm saying. But it definitely seems at least interesting, some of the things that returned, and some of the things that he explained to me, what this does, at least activates this PTSD part in my brain of playing against a newly released AdMech Codex. Because what this means, for example, is those great vanguards wounding you on 4+ for 1 CP are back, baby.
Yeah, wounding your Bellacore.
Exactly, wounding your Bellacore on 4s. Let's go. For 1 CP, you probably still, I mean, I haven't calculated it yet, but you probably still delete any monster, any light, let's see, Tyranid Warriors or stuff like this squad in the game. And it's at least interesting for me.
Yeah. I like you said, it creates some ideas, opportunities to even try.
Yep. I mean, the thing is, here, the main problem with AdMech, and I think you will agree with me here, wasn't that they weren't killy, or that they had just completely bad units. They just struggled extremely on secondaries. And that doesn't impact that at all.
Yeah, they didn't get +1 to victory point.
from one of the secondaries. I think also so many people before the Dataslate dropped mentioned that one of the most easiest solutions to AdMech, so easy to implement, would be changing some of the secondary wordings to end at the end of their turn and not the end of the battle round. That didn't happen, so they get literally nothing from secondaries. They are still completely out of psychic secondaries, as we know. They don't have psychics. I mean, they can take an Inquisitor, I guess, but that's probably suboptimal. I mean, it's possible that they will have enough firepower and interesting things back that it might make them work again by just, I don't know, playing aggressively, tabling your opponent, just kind of Tau things, right? Tau kind of plays this way of first remove your opponent from the table, dead opponents don't score, let's score my secondaries and see what the score is. Perhaps AdMech can do the same? I'm not sure, honestly.
Yeah, but there is a problem with this part that you score the secondaries.
That is true, but I mean, if you are able to actually table your opponent somehow, I mean, you will score something. Just take banners. I don't fucking know what the actual...
First of all, would it be enough to just beat your opponent? The secondaries he scored while he was on board. And the other thing is, I guess, current armies do not die so easily.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Yeah, when AdMech came out, the game was completely a different landscape, so I get what you're saying. For me, this change is actually interesting in a way. I think it's not enough. It definitely doesn't make AdMech immediately strong, as you would maybe expect it to, because just their secondary play is non-existent, and God knows how they actually kill people and current meta armies now, because we've never seen them do so. It at least makes you think about the army again. It sparks at least some kind of flame. How long it's gonna burn is debatable at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's the good part. But I guess it's like we can move from here to a big issue of Games Workshop, which is, for now, I don't think they see that faction secondaries just broke the game when they came out. In the biggest, it was like the biggest thing to broke the game.
Do I actually agree with that? Do you mean the faction secondaries as a whole from the very start, or the season?
What came last on the Nephilim GT pack? Is that called?
Yep.
Like there is like 100 secondaries, and there is no limitation to them. When you play, you can take like 3, and it's clearly you can see that some armies just take 3 of their faction, like Necrons, and they do like minimum 40 points for them for free, and the others are like, okay, my Codex secondaries are shit, but the normal ones are also shit, so
I just literally don't have options.
Yeah. That's the problem, that if you have like 100 secondaries and they are pretty similar on one hand, and on the other hand they are unbalanced at all, and like Necrons as an army are not the greatest army in the game.
Not at all.
The profiles are old. This is first codex of the 9th edition, so they are not so offensive, not so defensive, but they just do 80-90 points a game, and what you do against Necrons, you just chase them. Will you score enough to make it a draw, maybe a minor win?
So I actually have to okay, let's start with the fact that I have not, I think, talked with anyone who plays competitively or plays a lot who would say they like the secondary system. I'm not kidding. Like, I haven't met and talked with a single person that would say, man, I just love the secondaries. They are so interactive. It makes the game fun. It makes the game interesting. It plain doesn't. And it used to be kind of bad from the very start, in my opinion. I never liked them at all during whole 9th edition. I think the idea of faction secondaries is okay and used to be quite okay. There were secondaries. We used to have this thing where, for example, Space Marines had Oaths of Moment and everybody would lose their shit about it. Then Drukhari came out with Heard the Play and everybody went, what the fuck is this? It's still... and I remember talking back then about the secondaries, about how they should be nerfed and stuff. And after all that time, instead of actually fixing the problem, they just made it worse. Way worse. The meta used to be stale because all you took was Stranglehold to the last and one extra secondary that would probably be your faction secondary or whatever you could get hold of. They removed those, probably even RNG, right? And they removed all of those options and gave us nothing. Which I literally think is the problem with the system. I think unbalanced faction secondaries would be okay as an additional tool for balancing factions, because I actually like the idea that Necrons are a shit army or a suboptimal army who can play the 9th edition because they had good secondaries. I don't hate that idea. I think it's a fine way to balance the game. I think it's at least in theory interesting. and the idea that the army itself is medium and their power level is samey, but they actually score really well, I think is fine. The problem was that just taking away all of the basic options killed the system. I think this is the biggest problem. I don't actually believe that just enabling every faction to take as many secondary objectives from the book as possible is the problem. I think just complete lack of options for just the default options that anybody can take is what killed the system and just made it horrible.
Okay, so I guess we told the same, but in other ways.
Kind of, yes. I mean, you pointed out that you hate that you can take so many faction secondaries. I think that's fine.
Yeah. What I meant, it's not bad that you can take like 3. It would be okay if they are all balanced, all the same. But clearly, some factions have the very good secondaries and some have shit secondaries, right? As we said, Necrons have like 3 auto picks, and Admech, you don't even want a single one from their codex. And that's the problem. It was the same when the Maelstrom of War was playing with the cards, and then there were like default deck, and everyone has the same, and then the game was fine. And suddenly they also came up with idea of getting codex cards, and there was the same problem. I remember Iron Hands having like a card, if you kill unit you score 1 victory point, if you kill 2 you score I guess 3, and if you kill 3 you score 5, and the 5 was fucking a lot then. And some other codexes had a card like, when there is conjunction of Venus and the Mars, and you see the shooting star, you make a wish, you get 1 victory point.
Yeah, I remember those. Those were great.
It's a similar situation right now, but you can choose the secondary rather than, draw it from the deck.
Yep, definitely. But I mean, I think you can, if you compare the secondary system to those, it would be as if you added the faction cards and just completely removed the ones that score you the points for scoring the objective, right? Controlling the objective. So you have no other default options, and all you are relying on is those faction secondaries, which will not and won't get balanced. I don't believe it's possible to actually, for Games Workshop to actually take enough time and dedication to make this faction secondaries balanced. I think what they should immediately do, as fast as possible, is bring back some of other options. I'm not telling you bring back exactly Stranglehold or To the Last or any of those. I'm saying just actually make new stuff. Just do something. Just add some fucking secondaries, man. It's obnoxious that there are no choices. Most of them are complete trash.
Yep, agreed.
Mm-hmm. Alright, into the very last change, which can be summarized in Silent King doesn't have a core keyword.
Yay. Truth to be told, I didn't believe they would, think it out that's something wrong, that the fucking Silent King is a core unit.
A core unit. A core of the army, right? So every Necron army should have a Silent King. It's just the core of an army.
Yeah, exactly.
Every single Necron army you face in the galaxy has the Silent King. Their very own Silent King. Just so fucking dumb.
Yeah, but good for them. They think it out, so...
Yep. So what this... it actually removes core from the Catacomb Command Barge as well, which also is a change. That unit was played and was quite okay. This does... I mean, let's start with the fact that I thought this is gonna happen a week at most after the previous data slate.
Yeah. That's the same case with the Reaper of Obliterax.
Yep, but this specifically, I think we had a discussion, even me and you, on the Discord when this change happened, and everybody realized, oh my fucking god, Silent King just went core.
Yeah, and I guess we were like, yeah, that's the misprint. That's
that's just wrong, right?
They forgot to add the exclusion.
Exactly, they just didn't forgot to make it excluding characters or just excluding Silent King.
Yeah,
and we waited 4 fucking months for that. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. That's awesome. The actual change, I think, just to summarize, it's harder, I guess, to do the Code of Combat secondary. Because without Core and without Silent King giving himself all the rerolls, he doesn't actually kill that well. Same thing with the Command Barrage, which could also be used to score it quite effectively. Other than that, Necrons don't have that great of a killing character to score that secondary. So I guess one of their secondaries, which actually I think wasn't super optimal.
Yeah, it wasn't like the least chosen.
Yeah, the least optimal of the all 4 Necron secondaries, which all of them could feasibly be played, and the worst of them got a little bit worse. And I guess overall for Necrons, what this means is 2 things. First, I think you just might forgo the Silent King, as you previously could, because we already started seeing builds without him.
You never picked the Silent King because he was core, right? You either picked him because you wanted to have the rerolls, or you just ignored him because it's like too much points for what he does, in your opinion, right? And the thing that he was core was like...
It was a nice bonus.
Yeah, it was a nice bonus rather than think that you make the list around.
Yep. It basically was a great bonus, something... he did improve the damage, like consistency of the damage, I think. You had that extra model with a lot of shots, some nice attacks that could just push that additional damage from Necrons in. So that was definitely nice to have. And it definitely makes the model worse overall.
Still, it's like a great buffer.
Yep. But now it's really... Because now it is just a buffer, it kind of returns to the same role that he used to have before he got the core cure and before he was played in any Necron lists. At least in here. Because I remember seeing all kinds of crazy Necron lists all running Silent King before then, and I think that was just wrong. Like, completely fucking wrong. Before all of the units got core and all the Balance Dataslate slate changes for Necrons happened, and I think we might be back to the moment where running him is suboptimal again, because he's not at all essential to the Necron plan of winning the game.
Yep. If you want to have more killy Necrons, you take the Silent King. Yeah, if you're looking to play like Necrons should, so to score the objectives and ignore your opponent, you don't really have to take the Silent King.
Basically, right? So what it actually for me boils down to is one of the most boring factions in the game just got more boring. That's my actual opinion. I think Necrons were right now one of the most boring factions in the game. They just scored and scored and scored. And that's all they did. I mean, they did have some tricks. They definitely could play a nice micro-intensive game. That's all fine. But any army actually can do that, more or less. And all they relied upon is just outscore the shit out of your opponent. And now they will still do that, but they will kill you even less than they did. So their damage and their possibility to actually move you from the table got lowered, in a sense. So they will just be more boring. You will just have the option to score. Your option to kill might be reduced.
Yeah, I guess nothing else to add here.
And we move on to nothing. Because this is... Oh. And this is the best part. That's the whole 5 factions that were touched in the 4 months of waiting for the Dataslate. No Tau, so like, how many factions do we have in the game? 20 something? So 90% of the factions were not touched at all.
Yeah, the Tau is like perfectly balanced, come on.
50% win rate, man. 50% win rate, I guess. Apparently. Oh my god, what a complete disaster.
Yeah, I guess the sentence that like perfectly summarizes it is this famous our expectations were low, but holy
but
fuck.
holy fuck, right? Holy shit. Yeah, there are so many just great memes you can just post everywhere right now, which I've been doing since I seen this late. All of the disappointment memes are in, boys. It's just a complete waste of time. I honestly think underwhelming is not giving you the full perspective. Many of the factions will still struggle. The meta will not move significantly at all. If you are playing on any of the bottom factions, like, I don't know, Grey Knights for example, Death Guard, GSC famously not getting anything done to them. Amen from the it came to me right now. GSC are just like a 5th edition codex. They just got released, and that's it for the whole edition. They just refuse to touch that faction.
Perfectly balanced as all things should be.
Yep. Maybe they just, I don't know, fired the only guy that actually wrote the codex and had any idea how this works. This is why they just refuse to touch that faction, because nobody has any idea how this plays and how this codex works, so they have no idea how to change it in any meaningful way.
Come on, Pumba. We all know that there are unitors who first wash the floors and then after the job time they make the codexes there.
I mean, it might be actually the case. Jesus Christ. What a disappointment, man. Like, when I saw this dropped, I was so excited, and then suddenly I just wasn't at all. The perspective of playing the same, I think we can honestly say tired and quite boring meta for the next at least couple of months.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem for me, that you have to wait at least 3 months to any other change, because even if they see that it didn't change anything like in a month, and we all know it really will not, but then you have to wait, so basically the game stays the same, and it's not the greatest right now.
I mean, many people will say, and I think I at least somewhat like partially agree with the fact that the game is more balanced than it used to be, especially when we are talking released Tyranids, released Harlequins, released Drukhari, and any other broken as codex that came out this edition. So I guess we don't have that problem to this degree, at least, because we honestly did have that problem, right? Tyranids broken, some armies better, some armies bad. Well, it's just 40k at this point. The thing is, to me, the biggest fact remains that the game is just painfully boring. It's so hard for me to actually find dedication and just will to pump in many hours of gameplay, because it's just gotten so stale. That's because of the secondaries and the
primary missions are also all the same.
Yep. So from the 4 months of waiting for the Balance Dataslate, we will now all be waiting for chapter approved points and new missions or whatever, any other change that actually impact anything. So it feels just super underwhelming to come out of the period of intense waiting and every time refreshing every day to see if this Dataslate is out, into another couple or 3 months of waiting period to see any impact on the game.
Yeah, and that's sad.
That's just sad. As a whole, I think I do want to mention something, because after the Leagues of Votann Codex dropped, and was leaked, I guess, and all of the internet just gotten all of its pitchforks out and decided that the codex is completely broken and we must nerf it immediately. and after GW has done so. And then another such point was when they released I think exactly 2 weeks ago, their Meta Watch video and article talking about that they collect data and win rates are a thing, and we actually do care about stuff. They have gotten a lot of praise in the community. I've seen a lot of stuff saying they have a good grasp of what's going on. They have proven that they can see what community wants and see what the game is like, and they actually change. This data slate just proves to me that they didn't. They just didn't. They just farmed your goodwill reactions. Did like a massive nerf, which I think we are slowly approaching the point to agreeing that the nerf to Leagues of Wotan was way too harsh and unnecessarily big. That something should have been done, but definitely not this much. Not such significant nerfs.
They will remove it in the next data slate.
Yep, into the next data slate. And just I think this proves that. I think it's kind of lazy. Let's be honest. Like, I mean, we can listen to all the media and their video talking about that they collect so much data, but they don't. I mean, the data is available to anyone thanks to people from even Reddit, MetaWatch article, not MetaWatch, sorry, Meta of the Week articles or whatever it's called, guys at StatCheck that collect data, Goonhammer guys collecting data. So they actually, GW doesn't do shit, right? They don't collect the data. They just use the data that's available on the internet to anybody. And they look at it in the most basic ass way. They don't dive deep enough. They look just at the face value. They just literally, it's like opening a page, putting the basic fucking win rate in. Alright. And we just decide that the 55 to 45% win rate is bueno. We do not touch anything that's within this. Even though it might have wonky interactions, problems, or just unfun gameplay or whatever. We just don't touch that. We touch only something that's highly above that or very low below that, and even then we do the most, I think, dumbheaded decisions or the most basic decisions without thinking them or testing them through. I am severely disappointed in this, and I think it really proves that GW hasn't changed that much, and I think we just all got debated by marketing. That's my take from this whole situation.
It's like they analyze the data the way that is convenient to them.
Basically.
And their understanding of their game is at the very low level, I would say.
Yep. They basically, for me, that's the proof that they pretend to get those details, those laser takes, those super deep in dives, but it's just all marketing. It's just all marketing, and we do the basic thing. When it comes out undercooked like this after so much time, I don't think there's a good excuse.
It really looks like they realized at the Monday that they had the Balance Dataslate to do. So on the Monday they were drinking coffee. On the Tuesday they were like, okay, come on, John, let's write something. And on the Wednesday they wrote it. And of course the entire Thursday was like to make the PDF and upload it, right? Because we know it takes a lot of time.
It kind of looks like it. I think if you took a group of 10 very competitive players, either over here or in general Europe or anything in the world, you just take a mix of those players, give them a literal day, maybe even less than that. I think 5 or 6 hours of just focused input.
A brainstorm, right?
Exactly, just a basic brainstorm. Anybody that kind of group can do a better job than weeks upon weeks and months even of supposed work that goes into such data state. I am generally disappointed, and my day is ruined, and my evening because it's late evening right now.
Because you had to make the podcast about it.
Yeah, basically. All right. Do you have anything else to add after my ramblings and general saltiness?
So yeah, I would add that I guess our podcasts looks like this. So if you like to hear like our truth opinion, not the things that some other podcasters maybe want you to hear, just tune on to us, because we always say what we think. And if we want to complain, we just do it, because there is a lot of things that we can complain on in Games Workshop and Warhammer 40k.
I mean, it's just something that comes with being engaged in the game. If you love something, if you are engaged with it, if you have such a strong feelings towards it, I think it's just super normal to complain about it as well. If you don't like something that is happening to it, right? And it's also just super Polish. It's just
exactly, and that's in our blood also. So,
all right. So thank you everybody for tuning in, for listening to our ramblings, our saltiness, and general opinions about this data slate. Thank you so much, Duda, for having coming
you.
onto the podcast.
No problem, mate. No problem.
You were amazing, and thank you for all your takes as well. Other than that, check out our sponsors, Hegemon Shop and War Tiles. The links to their stores are going to be linked below.
2 more things. The Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast should be available. Also, the links in description. So if you just want to listen only to the audio, you can do it on those platforms. And we have some ideas to cover, like, let's say, comparison of 20.0 and windrow loose systems, such things. But if there are any topics you would like us to cover, let us know in the comments. Because maybe when we find the time, we will make it.
Yep. The time is always the issue. Put those ideas in the comments below, or even message Team Poland 40k on Facebook, for example. We also can read you there, and you can catch us there. All right. So again, thank you very much for listening, everybody, and until the next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.